One of David's friends has just been arrested out in Montana. Let's discuss. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, breaking news. We're literally jumping on right now. We're getting information as I'm recording, but TMZ has reported that a friend of singer David, somebody we've talked about a lot here on Sidebar, this guy named Langston has been arrested out in Montana. Now, it seems to be for failure to report as a witness. Why is that important? It is important because, as we've been reporting, there is apparently a grand jury that has been impaneled and has been hearing evidence in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who was found dead, her decomposed body found in a Tesla reportedly registered to singer David. This was back in September out in Los Angeles. And to be clear, David hasn't been charged or officially implicated in any crime, but with the reports of a grand jury, this is a flexible situation. We've always wondered what could come of that. Now, according to a representative for the Lewis and Clark County Jail, there was this warrant out for Langston's arrest. And as the information's coming out, again, we looked at the court records. It seems to be 23 years. He's 23 years old. It was originally for an unspecified warrant. So at first, while we couldn't confirm exactly what it was for, TMZ reported, though, that this warrant was out of Los Angeles, and it was for failure to appear as a witness. And by the way, he's currently being held without bond. And TMZ has also reported that police in Montana have been working with LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, and we believe that has been the unit that has been heading up this investigation into what happened to Celeste. By the way, this jail is out in Montana, population about 70,000. The jail is in Helena. It's the capital city. It's almost 1,200 miles from LA, so we think about that. Now, why is this also important? It's important based on our past reporting, because as we previously discussed on Sidebar, TMZ reported that with this grand jury apparently being in panel, there was a discussion, an alleged discussion outside the courtroom about an uncooperative witness. Okay, we go back to a conversation that may have happened in December between Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman, who we believe may be spearheading this case, and attorney Evan Jennis. And Jennis represents apparently both a witness, so maybe Langston, and Robert Morgenroth. Now, Robert Morgenroth is apparently the head of David's touring company and a manager of his label. We previously reported that Morgenroth has been potentially questioned, and we previously reported that Morgenroth had been questioned in front of this grand jury. Obviously, we don't know anything officially. Authorities aren't going to confirm it, but that's based a lot on the reporting, including from TMZ. So if you have an uncooperative witness, and now you have Langston being arrested out in Montana, potentially for failure to appear as a witness, you put two and two together, we're starting to see what might be going on here. Now, Langston, we believe, is a friend of David. We've seen him in photos with the singer. He has posted content himself. Don't know the exact connection. We also don't know if he knew Celeste, if he had a relationship with Celeste of some kind. And again, we can't officially confirm that he was supposed to be testifying in front of this grand jury. But again, we're trying to put two and two together. I want to bring on retired Detective Commander Will Svilar to talk about this. Will, thank you so much for coming on. Again, we're still developing this. I'm still looking for breaking news as we record this. This is a big development. Your thoughts?
Well, if he's being held for a failure to appear as a witness, that's a contempt of court charge. So the charge is contempt of court. They're going to extradite him, bring him back to LA. It sounds to me like, two and two, like you said, the grand jury's been convened since November. What happens then is the prosecution is presenting witness after witness, putting evidence in against a specific target or targets for a specific charge. So bringing this guy in, they probably believe has pertinent information to support this charge. And it sounds to me like the noose is starting to tighten around the offender.
If we assume that he was supposed to be testifying in front of the grand jury, and obviously we know grand juries are kind of one-sided, it's the prosecution presenting enough evidence to suggest, hey, can you return an indictment? First, we had thought that it was just an investigative grand jury that couldn't return an indictment. Then there was reporting, no, this is a grand jury that can return an indictment. The standard to get back an indictment is relatively low, but it's the prosecution's case. They're presenting evidence to support whatever charges they're looking for here. If we assume he's been an uncooperative witness, and we assume he's all the way in Montana, so 1,200 miles away, timeline's interesting, right? So the reporting in December of an uncooperative witness, and now in January, I wonder if they might have had trouble finding him. I don't know the circumstances of his arrest. I don't know the talk to me about the cooperation if you have LAPD now working with Montana to maybe find him. I do wonder, was there an issue to figure out where he was?
Sure, it could have taken a while to find him, but once you swear out a warrant and you put a warrant across the database across the country, anywhere this guy gets stopped, it's serviceable. As long as it's a good warrant, it's serviceable, and there's extradition involved, it gets served wherever he is. And you get it out there across law enforcement channels, you put it into leads. Once it's in leads, every law enforcement agency has it. So regardless of where he went, he was eventually going to get caught. Now, they may have had some information from whatever sources that he was up in Montana, but this could be as simple as a routine traffic stop where he gets picked up on a name check.
What do you think his connection is to this case?
Well, he's a friend. He's an influencer. I think the purpose of the grand jury is to try to find out what that connection is. And again, there's so many different things out there with these influencers and the YouTube. I don't know what his connection would be, but the grand jury wants to find out, and then prosecution wants to find out. And again, now you can bring him back, extradite him, make him go to the grand jury, but he could still take the fifth, doesn't have to testify.
Yep. I was going to ask you that. I mean, if this is true, he's uncooperative, what's the value? What's the value? But then again, I guess they believe if he takes the fifth, you know, I mean, I do wonder what that would look like and what the value of it is. But by the way, you don't even know, I don't even know if he's somehow implicated in this. You don't even know, we don't even know that as well. If they're like, you know, if he's not just a witness, but he's somehow potentially a criminal defendant, we don't know. And a lot of this is speculation because we don't even know what charges they're looking at. I can't officially confirm what David would be looking at if they are looking at him. Because at first it was, right, there might not be any charges other than concealment of a body. They weren't 100% sure it was a homicide, it was a murder. Reporting kind of changed on that. So again, you do wonder what his role might be.
Well, if it comes back, the medical examiner comes back that this is a homicide, changes everything. If it's a homicide, now you're looking at a murder charge. This grand jury is being presented information and evidence to support a specific charge against a specific person or persons. Could this guy be part of it? He could be, or he could just be a witness. Now, the benefit of bringing him in, if he decides he doesn't want to testify, he wants to take the fifth, well, then the judge can make him sit. The judge who issues a warrant can make him sit in jail. And, you know, up to 30 days, you might change your mind.
That's a good point. And yeah, Montana. I wonder, you know, they talk about what's the connection here, right? First of all, we don't know where David is. Have no idea where David is. He's been radio silent, no idea where he is. You know, they talked about this kind of Santa Barbara trip that David may have taken and whether or not it has any connection to what happened to Celeste, because we don't have an official, let's be clear, we don't have a cause or manner of death. The medical examiner's reports have been sealed. We don't know exactly if they have a theory of when she died, where she died, how long she's been in that car. But Montana, now I wonder whether or not LAPD will have the ability to go to Montana and maybe see if there's any evidence connected to Celeste's death there, or it's just Montana's somehow connected to this guy and not anybody else.
Well, every time that my guys had warrants that got served out of state, the first thing I did was put them on a plane to wherever that warrant was served and to see if they could get some conversation going before extradition. So I'd be really surprised if LAPD wasn't in Montana right now talking to this guy or trying to talk to this guy.
We also have gotten word that they're going to continue to have witnesses testify, maybe even into next month. So for those who are wondering whether or not an indictment will come out or whether an indictment will come down soon, what is your theory on this? And also, by the way, do you think in a case like this where there's so much speculation and there's the possibility, when you think about what happened to Celeste, whether or not multiple people can be involved, do you think that this is a grand jury that is hearing evidence against multiple people and there would be multiple indictments or indictment containing multiple defendants at the same time?
Absolutely could well be. And I can tell you, like you mentioned earlier, the threshold to get an indictment, to get probable cause to indict it, to move it on to trial to the next phase isn't that high. Okay. It's like probable cause. But if you're bringing all these witnesses, you're laying out a pretty complex complaint or a complaint argument that possibly there could be more than one person. Matter of fact, I'd be surprised if there was only one person.
Even as I'm reporting this, I'm realizing how little information we actually have about this. Do you think once there's an indictment, or if there's an indictment, authorities will release the information they have? They'll they petitioned a court to seal the medical examiner's records. Do you think it's all going to be released? I mean, do you think all that information will be released to the public, the media? I know it's still an ongoing investigation, I imagine, but when will they give answers?
I mean, the records are sealed right now. That grand jury is always sealed until a judge says you can give information. If there's an indictment on this, I think you're going to hear an indictment. You're going to hear an announcement of an indictment. You may get some background, but I don't think they're laying out their whole case. And we can't get it because right now all the transcripts are sealed. So until it gets unsealed by a judge, we won't know anything until probably time of trial.
And by the way, just to go back to Neil Langston, if someone is allegedly uncooperative, does that mean they have something to hide? Or have you seen in your experience, maybe they don't want to testify for a variety of reasons?
Both ways. Either someone's got something to hide, and more often than not, when we get reluctant witnesses, and you know, 32 years on a job, I worked murders and violent crimes for 25 of them. Most of the time in those instances where we can't get someone to cooperate, it's because out of fear. Their fear of retribution, and they don't want to get themselves involved or their families involved.
This is also a case that develops and changes rapidly, which makes me always wonder whether or not people have been talking, people have been cooperating. So as I mentioned, if there was that shift from we don't know what happened to Celeste, there might not be any charges beyond concealing her body, and then, oh, maybe it's a homicide investigation. I do wonder if this is a case where deals have been worked out and whether or not people have been incentivized to provide testimony.
When you talk about a deal, you know, if you say you've got someone who's a co-defendant, if there's a co-defendant in a trial and you make a deal with them to testify against another person, that testimony cannot come in until the charge that you're making a deal with is adjudicated. So it can't be two trials going on at the same time. It has to be adjudicated. There has to be a punishment or a sentence, and then that person can come in to testify. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what any of these witnesses are saying because it's sealed. You could have half of them coming in and taking a fifth. But I believe they're probably getting some pretty good information. That's why it's continuing, and they're calling more people.
By the way, did you see this mugshot of him? We have it. Did you see it? Where
he looks pretty
smiling. That was weird.
Yeah, he looks like he's in a good mood.
Yeah, that was interesting, just to say the least. I mean,
yeah, I did see that.
But you also think about how young they are. I mean, you're talking about 23-year-old. What's David? 20 years old. These are young people that investigators might be looking at. I think and that's, by the way, something else that everybody talks about. You know, they say if they're looking at David, it's not just in connection with the death of Celeste, but any alleged relationship he had with her. Do you think that's being explored?
Sure, absolutely. There's ages of consent. She's below the age of consent. He's over the age of consent. That's an inappropriate relationship, and not only inappropriate, but illegal. So when we talk about the indictments and the charges, that could very well be part of it.
Do you think they know where David is right now?
I think they probably have a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm. And we know, as we were previously reported, his attorney, he's retained Blair Burke, who is a very high-powered attorney. So I have to imagine there must be some sort of communication between her and authorities. Just going back, completely different case, but with the Diddy case, right? His attorneys were in constant communication with federal prosecutors about where he is. He's going to come to New York. We've taken his passport. Do you imagine something like that's been going on here?
I would guarantee it. There's no way Blair Burke's going to hide her client. When it comes time to indictment or for charges, she'll surrender the client. No question about it. She'd be foolish not to. When
are we going to learn more about this guy? Are we going to learn more about when he's taken back to LA? Will we know the circumstances of what's going on? How much will the public and the media be aware of this? Oh, wait, hold on. I got an update. Okay. Oh, okay. Listen to this. It appears he was brought in by the U.S. Marshals last night at around 6 p.m. What do you make of that?
U.S. Marshals Task Force works with every jurisdiction in the country. Every department or every county has a U.S. Marshal Task Force that basically they serve warrants. Criminal warrants, they get the criminal warrants, they do all their stuff, ping phones, whatever they have to do, and they find the person. So federal task force, we use it all the time. And that task force is U.S. Marshals and also local law enforcement.
What assets do they provide? Because originally, right, it was supposed to be LAPD coordinating with Montana authorities. Why bring in the U.S. Marshals? What resources do they have that Montana authorities or LAPD doesn't have?
Well, they have the expertise. Well, first of all, the warrant in LA once you bring it over to out of state, LA can't really serve it. They have to have local law enforcement do it. And the marshals are a great asset because they have all the information. They have access to phone records, and the people that write their warrants to ping phones and to look for people are very good. It's all they do. All they do is get for criminal warrants, serve them, and get the bad guys off the street. And they're very good at it.
By the way, Steve Fisher, who we've had on this program before, he's the private investigator who has been hired by the owner of that property that David had been renting and staying at where the Tesla was found nearby. Neil Langston has been arrested in Montana on a Los Angeles Superior Court warrant for failure to appear for testimony. Lewis and Clark County expects LA County to begin the extradition process. By the way, can you just explain a little bit more about what we can expect with extradition?
Yes, he will go before a judge in Montana, and he will either waive extradition or he'll fight extradition. 9 out of 10 times they waive extradition and they are brought back to the jurisdiction by detectives from that jurisdiction. If he waives it, now it has to go to the governor, or if he fights it, it has to go to the governor of Montana, who has to say, yep, it looks like there's probable cause, you have to go. And that's usually about 30 days. It doesn't happen very often, but that's usually what it does. It's just a formality where it takes about another month.
And you wouldn't really want to fight it if you feel like, you know, you're going back. Like, you would fight it because you're going to stay in jail. If you fight it, you're staying in jail in Montana. Whereas if you're like, okay, I'm not fighting it, let's go back to LA, he's probably not going to be kept in jail. I mean, if he's cooperative and decides to testify or whatever the situation may be, I mean, again, we don't know if he's facing charges or whatnot, but there wouldn't be an incentive for him to fight it per se, right?
No, I wouldn't think so. You're getting a free ride home. And like you said, if you go before the grand jury and you give testimony, you're not going to be locked up. The warrant will take care of itself. All the charges will be dismissed. Now, if he doesn't provide testimony, it's up to them it's up to the judge whether or not they want to keep him in jail on contempt charges, and they could.
One thing I forgot to mention is that he did see a judge for a courtesy arraignment today, and he's already being transferred out to Los Angeles. Anything we should be thinking about there?
No, he's not fighting it, and the LA detectives are bringing him back to LA County.
All right. I don't really have much more. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all we can report right now. It is an interesting development because there hasn't been much, but Will Spielar, thank you so much for jumping on so quickly and talking about this.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock. We got Sidebar episodes up there as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, I got my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday nights. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next time.